On the surface, love seems simple. You give. You nurture. You sacrifice. But sometimes, love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's an invitation to be erased. For 45 years, Richard and I believed that giving everything for our daughter was enough. Until the day came when she looked us in the eye and told us we weren't invited. That was the moment we learned. Letting go isn't always abandonment. Sometimes, it is the only way to reclaim your dignity and the only way to find peace. My hands were trembling as I held the silver-wrapped gift box. Behind me, my husband of 45 years stood frozen in his freshly pressed suit. The words hit me like ice water poured down my back. Mom, Dad, you're not invited. This is my day. Please leave. She had no idea we could cancel everything with a few phone calls. By sunset, her perfect wedding would crumble around her, and she'd learn what happens when you throw away the parents who sacrificed everything for you. The venue contract has your name on it, Richard whispered, his voice shaking with disbelief. I nodded silently, still staring at our daughter's cold expression. How could we have raised someone who would do this to us after everything we had given her? I remember checking my appearance one last time in the hallway mirror before we left for the wedding. My hair was freshly styled, a splurge at $85 that I rarely allowed myself. The pale blue dress had been carefully selected to complement the wedding colors without drawing attention. Richard adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to Olivia's college graduation. Do I look okay? I asked, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from my skirt. Beautiful as always, Margaret, he said, with that smile that still warmed me after all these years. On the hallway table sat the silver-wrapped box containing my mother's necklace. 3 generations of Wilson women had worn it on their wedding days. I had cleaned and polished the antique silver and pearl pendant until it gleamed. I imagined Olivia's face when she opened it, perhaps a rare moment of emotion from our increasingly distant daughter. The drive to Lakeside Gardens was filled with light conversation and memories. Remember when Olivia used to make us those construction paper cards? Richard chuckled. The ones where she'd trace her hand to make a turkey at Thanksgiving? And insist we display them on the fridge until they fell apart, I added, smiling at the memory of our little girl with pigtails and boundless enthusiasm. Where had that little girl gone? When had she transformed into the woman who now barely returned our calls? We arrived at the venue, the elegant garden estate that Richard and I had paid for from his retirement fund. $32,000 for the venue alone. The flowers, the catering, the photographer, the band, all bearing our signatures on the contracts. Even the wedding planner had been our suggestion when Olivia became overwhelmed with the details. As we walked toward the ceremony space, a young woman with a clipboard approached. You must be Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, Olivia's parents, right? Yes, that's us, Richard replied warmly. Olivia asked me to bring you to her when you arrived. She's in the bridal suite. We followed her through manicured gardens where workers were making final adjustments to the floral arch. White roses and blue hydrangeas, just as Olivia had wanted. I noticed the string quartet setting up near the rows of white chairs. Everything was perfect, just as we had planned. The woman knocked on a door decorated with a hand-lettered bride sign. Olivia, your parents are here. The door opened, and there stood our daughter in her wedding gown. Not the one she had initially chosen with me, I noticed. This was more elaborate, with delicate beadwork across the bodice that must have cost a fortune. Her hair was swept up elegantly, her makeup flawless. For a moment, I felt a surge of maternal pride. My beautiful daughter on her wedding day. Then I saw her expression. There was no warmth, no joy at seeing us. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes cool and assessing. Behind her, I glimpsed several young women in matching blue dresses, her bridesmaids watching with curious expressions. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice flat and businesslike. What are you doing back here? Richard frowned slightly. The wedding coordinator brought us. We wanted to see you before the ceremony, give you our gift. I extended the silver box, smiling despite the growing unease in my stomach. It's your grandmother's necklace, the one you always admired. I thought maybe you'd want to wear it today. Olivia didn't take the box. Instead, she stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. Look, she said, lowering her voice. There's been a change of plans. What do you mean? I asked. She sighed as if explaining something to a child. Mom, Dad, you're not invited to the ceremony or reception. This is my day, and Tyler and I have decided we want it to be just our friends and his family. Please leave. The words didn't make sense at first. Not invited to our own daughter's wedding. The wedding we had paid for. I don't understand, Richard said, his voice suddenly hoarse. We're your parents. We've arranged everything. And I appreciate that, Olivia said without a hint of actual appreciation. But this is what Tyler and I want. His parents have certain expectations about the kind of wedding this should be. And honestly, it's just better this way. Better without us. The implication hung in the air. Unspoken but unmistakable. Olivia, I began, my voice trembling. We've spent months helping you plan. We've paid for everything. Your father took money from his retirement account to give you the wedding you wanted. She shrugged, a small dismissive gesture that cut deeper than any words. And I'm grateful, but this day isn't about you or what you've paid for. It's about Tyler and me starting our life together. A young man in an expensive suit approached. Tyler, Olivia's fiancé of 2 years. Tall, handsome, from what Olivia had described as a good family. He placed a proprietary hand on her shoulder. Is everything okay here? He asked, his eyes coolly assessing us. Fine, Olivia said. I was just explaining to my parents that the guest list has changed. Tyler nodded, not even pretending to look sympathetic. I'm sorry about the confusion, but we really need to stick to our plan. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Behind them, the door opened slightly and a bridesmaid peeked out. She whispered something to Olivia and they both laughed, a small exclusive moment of amusement that felt like another deliberate exclusion. I stood there, the gift box heavy in my hands as the reality of the situation sank in. My throat went dry. Around us, guests had begun to arrive, some glancing curiously in our direction. One woman, Tyler's mother, I realized from the photos Olivia had shown us, gave me a look I couldn't forget. A mix of surprise and mild irritation, as if we were uninvited strangers causing a scene. She knew who we were. She had to know. Yet she turned away without acknowledgement, guiding an elderly couple toward the seating area. You should go, Olivia said, already turning back toward the bridal suite. The planner can show you out a side entrance so you won't disturb the arriving guests. I looked at our daughter, really looked. Her face was calm. Not angry, not conflicted, not sad. Just blank. Completely blank. Like we were a minor problem she needed to solve before getting back to her important day. Richard stood beside me, silent. I felt his hand clench beside mine. I knew that tension in his jaw all too well, the kind of stillness he maintained when trying not to show pain. I thought of all the moments leading to this betrayal. The day Olivia told me not to come to her dress fitting. It'll be tight, Mom. I'll send you photos. She never did. The venue confirmation she forwarded to us with the curt message. We picked this one. Hope you're okay with it. We weren't included in the decision. We were merely informed. The florist calling me for final approval on arrangements I hadn't selected. I paid without complaint, not wanting to stress Olivia. Mom, don't stress me, she had said when I asked about seeing the centerpiece mock-ups. I just want to enjoy this. And I had let it go. Like I let everything go. Because I thought that's what a mother does. And now she was telling us to leave. In front of everyone. Like we were uninvited guests who had crashed her wedding. Olivia turned and walked away, rejoining her bridesmaids. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. The wedding coordinator approached, her professional smile faltering slightly. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, if you'll follow me, I can show you to a side exit. Richard found his voice first. That won't be necessary. We know our way out. We left quietly, heads held high despite the burning humiliation. We walked past the floral arch we had paid for, past the catering van we had arranged, past the chairs we had selected together 6 months ago. We got into our car. I held the gift box in my lap, staring at it for a long time. I didn't cry, not yet. She threw us away, I said, barely above a whisper. Richard sat back in the seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel though he hadn't started the engine. We raised a princess and got an ice queen. My heart felt like it cracked down the middle. But I nodded. I thought about the skipped birthdays, the quick replies to our messages, the time she said she was too busy to visit, the way she said, "We just need space right now." When we asked if we could stop by, she had been distancing herself for a while. We just didn't want to admit it. She told her friends we had insisted on paying. We didn't. We had offered with love, wanting to give her the perfect day. She took our money, took our time, took our help, and now she acted like we were strangers intruding on her special moment. "Stop the car," I said suddenly, though we hadn't moved. "Where? Anywhere with Wi-Fi?" Richard nodded, turned on the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. He drove a few miles down the road to a small cafe with a free Wi-Fi sign in the window. We walked inside, sat down, and opened our phones. The wedding was still happening. The guests were still arriving. The flowers were still being arranged. The music would soon play. The photos would be taken. But not for long. Our names were on the contracts. The final payments were pending for many services. We still had control. Richard looked at me, a question in his eyes. For 45 years, I had been the peacemaker in our family. The one who smoothed things over, who forgave quickly, who put others first. Always. Not today. I nodded. "Do it." We drove home in silence. Not the comforting kind of silence built from years of understanding, but the heavy kind that sinks into your bones. The road stretched long, and the sky, once bright with wedding day promise, turned a pale, indifferent gray. I stared out the window, not really seeing anything. It wasn't just what Olivia had done today. It was everything that came before. Everything we had ignored, forgiven, or explained away. Each mile brought memories sharper than the last, stacking one atop another until I could hardly breathe. I remembered when Olivia was 16 and we bought her first car. Not new, but safe and reliable. A sensible blue Honda that cost $7,000 from our savings. She didn't say thank you. She just took the keys and drove to her friend's house. "I didn't ask for a used one," she had muttered under her breath. Richard had laughed it off. "Teenagers?" he'd said with a shrug. I told myself she'd appreciate it later. She never did. Then college. We co-signed her loans, paid her rent the first year, sent care packages with handwritten notes and homemade cookies. She called when she needed something more money for books, help with a paper, advice on a difficult roommate, but rarely just to talk. When she graduated, she invited us to the ceremony but sat with her friends afterward, taking pictures with Tyler's family, whom she'd only known for a few months. We had to ask a stranger to take one photo of the three of us. Still, we smiled and celebrated her achievement. We told ourselves it was her age, that she'd mature. But it didn't stop. When she got her first job in marketing, we helped her move to the new city. We bought her furniture, spent 2 weekends setting up her apartment. She said, thanks once without a hug or a card, then left to meet a friend for dinner. The signs were there. Years of small dismissals, quiet rejections, subtle erasures. But we kept showing up because that's what parents do, right? We give, we stay, we hope. I looked at Richard as he drove, his face unreadable except for the tightness in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped against the steering wheel. He felt it too. The years, the hurt, all of it rising now that the curtain had been pulled back so completely. When we got home, I didn't even go inside right away. I sat on the porch, still holding the silver-wrapped box. That necklace had been my mother's. She had worn it at her wedding. I had worn it at mine. Olivia had once played with it as a child, spinning in front of the mirror, saying, I want this when I get married. She hadn't even glanced at the box today. Inside, I heard Richard on the phone, his voice calm but sharp as he canceled remaining payments. I knew that tone. It only emerged when he'd reached a breaking point. I finally went inside, set the box on the kitchen table, and sat down across from it like it was a person I needed to confront. Then I opened my laptop. Emails, dozens of them. All the wedding planning correspondence we had been looped into, then slowly pushed out of. We decided to go with a different cake vendor. Can you just send the deposit directly to the planner? It'll be easier. We moved the rehearsal to Friday afternoon. Hope that still works for you. Hope. They always hoped, but never asked. Olivia and Tyler had positioned us as assistants, as support staff, never family. The longer I read, the clearer it became. We were only invited to contribute, not to participate. We were ATMs with emotions they found inconvenient. I scrolled through my text messages with her. Short answers, delayed responses, messages left unread. One stood out from 3 weeks ago. Me. Are you free this weekend? Would love to have lunch. Just us. Olivia. Can't. Wedding errands. Maybe another time. Another time never came. And yet I kept trying. The resentment wasn't a sharp sting anymore. It was steady. A pulse beneath everything. I made dinner that night on autopilot. Stirred the sauce. Set the table. Washed my hands twice because I forgot I'd already done it. Richard didn't say much. We were both trying to process what we'd allowed. Not just today, but for years. After we ate, he pulled out the box with the wedding invoices, laid them out one by one. Venue final payment still owed. Florist deposit made, balance unpaid. Photographer final payment due this week. Band half paid, half pending. She never confirmed the final guest count with the caterer. The manager had mentioned they might not even have had enough food. I stared at the papers, each line a reminder of what we gave and how little it mattered. It wasn't just about money, it was the absence of care. The decision to exclude us from the moment she had claimed as her own after we built it for her. Later that evening, the calls started again. Unknown number. Voicemail. Then her number. Olivia. I didn't answer. Let it ring. Then she texted. What is going on? Why is everything shutting down? I read the message 3 times. She didn't say, why did you leave? Or, I'm sorry. She asked why her event was falling apart. No acknowledgement of what she did. No remorse. Just panic over the consequences. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, another message. Did you cancel everything? That's so cruel. How could you ruin the most important day of my life? I stared at the screen. The most important day of her life. Ours didn't matter. Our place in it didn't matter. I typed one sentence. You told us we weren't invited, so we left. And that was it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of years of choices. Of the slow erosion of something we didn't want to admit had been breaking for a long time. Olivia had made her choice. We were making ours. And it started with finally stepping back from someone who only called when she needed something. That night, I didn't sleep much. But for once, it wasn't because I was worried about Olivia. It was because I finally understood the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And you don't go back.